The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The METUS Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
All right, so Paul, at the end of March, we're going to the National Sales Conference, you and I, and we're going to St. Louis.
We are.
So, of course, I had to look up what types of foods, because we went, it was the last in-person sales conference we went to that was New Orleans. Yeah, so we had beignets and gumbo and jambalaya and what's that other stuff? Touffee,
yeah. And crawdads or the crawfish.
Yeah, that's something I still have to
those are so
try
good.
out, but
Those are so
a little
good.
Skeeved out by crawdads for some reason.
So I'm looking forward to St. Louis. I've been to St. Louis before, but I was just there. I think both times I went, I was just there for a day, and I didn't really have time. I went to lunch. I don't remember what I had, but so these things are making us look up. And you started this, Steve. Let's find out what this place is known for, food-wise.
Yeah, and we're staying right at the Arch, I think.
Yeah.
We're very close to the Arch, St. Louis.
So one thing I didn't know they were known for was fried ravioli. So there used to be a place down the street here, the Chateau, and I think there's still one in Waltham, and they had fried ravioli, a little Italian place. They had fried ravioli. Those things were so good.
Also known as toasted ravioli, but can't go wrong. A little bit of marinara on the sauce on the side.
And I'm finding a theme here. You know, when we talked about Minneapolis, they have their own Minneapolis pizza. And, you know, I used to think it was just Chicago, New York pizza. That was it. But apparently there's a Detroit pizza. And now St. Louis is also known.
Yeah, so they're known for a tavern style pizza. It's like a cracker.
I love
cracker thin.
I love thin pizza.
And I mentioned Dave Portnoy before, but he'd be proud to have. He's probably had a St. Louis style pizza before. If it's got doesn't have a lot of flop to it or anything. It's nice.
It's so good,
crispy.
And they don't use mozzarella. They use Provel cheese, which I've never heard of. So I guess it's a blend of Swiss and cheddar and provolone. It sounds tastier than mozzarella. I love mozzarella, but it's a little plain tasting.
Here's an interesting one: frozen custard concrete. So, I
wonder why they call it concrete, though. It's kind of scary. But it's a dessert, so I'm in.
So, yeah, it's blended with hazelnuts, strawberries, graham crackers. All right, now you throw graham crackers in there.
Yeah, everything tastes good.
It's going to be amazing.
You know, the one thing I've been looking forward, somebody mentioned this to me a couple of weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to this, is the gooey butter cake.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I saw this picture, I saw a recipe of it, and I am just dying to try that. It's called gooey butter cake. It's a dessert. Now, it even says in one of the articles I read, it's not the best looking dessert you'll ever get, but I don't know, there's something about it. First of all, it's got butter.
Yeah.
And butter just makes everything taste good. I don't care what it is. I guess it can come frozen too. I don't know how to make it. Of course.
Yeah, so it says, as with fried raviolis, the gooey butter cake was invented accidentally.
Nice.
Someone dropped a ravioli into hot oil, and it was amazing, apparently. And same thing with the gooey butter cake. Someone dropped a stick of butter with some flour on it.
You know, not to get off topic, but I heard Doritos were invented by accident too. I think it was at Disney. They used to cut off the corners
of tortillas.
Of the tortillas, and they said, "Hey, what are we going to do with this?" And somebody said, "Oh, let's sell them." And that's how Doritos came about.
Did you know that Pringles was originally a tennis ball company, and then when they ordered the rubber to make the tennis balls, potatoes showed up, and they're like, "Screw it, cut them up." That's a Mitch Hedberg joke.
Oh, okay.
Oh, because of the can.
Good old Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah. Because the can looks like a tennis ball.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, St. Louis is also.
I was looking at you like, are you serious right now? I think you're making that up.
Yeah, he got us.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
God rest his soul. Great comedian. He's so dry, but so funny. Yeah.
So St. Louis also is known for barbecue. There's St. Louis barbecue, there's Texas barbecue, there's Carolina barbecue. Everything's a little different. But obviously they're known for their type of barbecue and specifically St. Louis ribs. So you're the rib guy,
Oh, I love my ribs, and I'm constantly making ribs at home and everything. And
So
I'm very curious how people make their ribs across the country. Next week, Bryn, we're in Dallas, so we're going to Hard Eight's Barbecue.
Yep.
That's a dry rib. I love dry
too.
ribs, and then you have the choice of dipping it in sauce or throwing some sauce on it on your own. But it looks like St. Louis style ribs are a wet rib. They sauce them up, and that's how you get them. Almost like a Texas Roadhouse type of rib, but it looks amazing. Now, when you go to the Carolinas for ribs, you're getting a sour. They do a lot with sour,
More tang.
vinegary,
tangy
flavors. And then Kansas City, I'm still trying to get out to Kansas, so I tried Kansas City ribs. But here's an interesting one: red hot riblets.
Looks like potato chips.
Yeah,
to me.
it looks like potato chip, very hot potato chips. Looks like a bag of heartburn, but that's okay. We're gonna try that next time when we're there in March. Paul will have to grab and stop at a convenience store, see if they have some red hot riblets. What about a Gerber sandwich?
Is that made with baby food?
No, it's
I don't
not.
know.
Thank God.
No.
But wait a minute. 2 slices of bread spread with pablum.
Pablum or strained carrots. It is baby food.
Okay. Yeah, so it is baby food.
Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Read the thing. It says, if you imagine the Gerber sandwich would be 2 slices of bread spread with pablum or strained carrots, you would not be alone. But that's not what the Gerber sandwich is. Rather, this inventage is a segment of French or Italian bread spread. Oh my God, Steve. Spread
There it is.
with
Provel cheese again.
garlic butter, holding slices of ham and Provel cheese, same as on the St. Louis pizza, sprinkled with paprika and toasted. Okay.
Now I'm curious about Provel cheese. What is this cheese?
Well, it's a Swiss provolone and cheddar mixed together.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but this doesn't sound like something that's very difficult to make. It sounds actually very good.
Sounds like a ham and cheese melt.
Garlic. It's got garlic in it. It's good.
I'll eat anything with garlic on it.
This next one's piqued my interest. Snoots.
Yeah, I'm staying away from that one. Honestly.
Let me tell you something. Some of the best pork meat comes from the pig's face.
Yeah,
it's from
the
its
jowls. Yeah.
the neck meat and cheeks.
Yeah, I've always heard cheeks
And
were good.
why not the snoot?
So snoots is actually pig noses.
Yes.
It is.
Yep. And they don't waste anything. It's from the nose right to the tail. They're cooking everything.
What's that guy that does the really strange foods on TV? That used to have
Andrew Zimmerman.
Andrew Zimmerman. This is something up his alley.
So a good friend of mine, Cam, owns Cam's Cuisine, Chinese restaurant. We were just talking about this the other day. He said in America we waste more food because they use every single part of that animal and they put whatever sauce they can find. I mean, it's amazing. You'll be eating tripe, which is basically stomach.
Yeah, pig
right?
stomach or
I don't like
cow
tripe.
stomach. Sorry.
But they cook it in such. I tried it. They cook it in such a way that it's delicious. My wife's like, "Oh my God, that's disgusting."
Organ meat? Do you ever tried organ
Now,
meat?
certain organ meats like livers and kidneys and things like that,
I've had liver. I'm not a fan of it. I've had chicken hearts.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I've had that at the Brazilian steakhouses, and it's like eating a little, and like eating an old Sour Patch Kid with no flavor.
I want to go back to the snoots here because, this article, it does say, while snoots, like pork rinds, may seem like the proverbial heart attack on a plate, it's been reported, and this is according to the Missouri Department of Agriculture, snoots have 43% protein and 2% fat.
Well,
So it's not bad. It's pretty tasty.
Yeah,
That's what they
there you
say.
go,
It's pretty
Brendan.
tasty.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
good,
may
man.
Throw
actually,
out your little protein whey mixture cup and eat snoots.
get some snoots.
Yeah, I may have to try that. And then there's another St. Louis Slinger is a classic diner food, usually with, sorry, Brent. It's got 2 eggs, hash browns, and ground beef patty with a huge dollop of chili, shredded cheese, and raw onions on top. See, this sounds delicious to me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then there's a St. Paul sandwich, which is weird that it would not be in Minnesota. It would just be in St. Louis. It must be the guy from St. Paul. It's an egg foo young patty between 2 slices of white bread with pickles, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise.
Have you ever had egg foo young, Brendan?
I don't think so.
I don't even know what egg foo young is.
So egg foo young is basically an omelet
Yeah.
with scallions and everything in the omelet, and then they pour gravy over it.
Oh.
Yeah, Chinese gravy like you would get on boneless chicken. I just had it not too long ago. I hang out at the Chinese restaurant and try everything they have.
Where? What Chinese restaurant was it?
Cam's Cuisine. Yes.
I think the last probably month or so, maybe month and a half. You've been telling me a lot of stories from there.
Yeah. So became good friends with the owners, and I'm always curious on how they cook the food, and it's just always trying something different.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get something that's not on their menu. They're like, "Hey, you going to try this, Steve?" I just came out, and the other day they gave me a bowl of venison soup. And it was
venison's really good. I like venison.
Yeah,
but we're gonna make
done right.
We're gonna make a new rule. We're never gonna record a podcast before lunch again.
And we're 10 minutes into the podcast, just talking about food. Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, everybody.
Let's get to our topic.
Yes. So that was fun, but we need to get to business here.
Yeah. All right. So. Again, this is going to be probably, I don't know, 5th, 6th episode about A2L. We're going to continue that. And I think I could be wrong because something else could come up. We could get some more fan mail and stuff. But I think this is going to be our last A2L podcast, at least for a while. So we're going to finish this up. And I wanted to specifically talk about the refrigerant sensors.
Yeah.
So, Bryn, this is right up your alley. You're the one that's done more on this. You and Scott have done more on this than any of us. So,
I get, you got to shout out Scott because he developed pretty much all the training surrounding the A2L transition. Yeah. He was involved very early on.
Yep.
And, me and him had a team effort towards the end, getting that presentation for the 2-day course finalized. But,
and some of you may be thinking, why Scott? Why does Scott get tasked with this? Well, he's out of our headquarters in Suwanee, Georgia. Yep. So he's right there with all of the engineers. He's there with our design team, so it makes it a lot easier to put all that training together and gather the information. He can jump from cubicle to cubicle and rub elbows with the right people and get that information.
Yep.
Yeah, besides the fact that he's just so damn smart.
Yes, he is. He's wicked smart. He's wicked smart. He's a nice guy. And he volunteered. If anybody asks, he volunteered.
Yeah, he jumped right in.
Yeah. No, I volunteered him. I said, Scott can do it.
Yeah, and he's all excited about our commercial 454 or R32 lineup that's coming out.
Well, Bryn volunteered for that. Because Bryn said, you know what, don't give this to Scott. Don't dump it all on him. I go, thank you for volunteering. So my first question is, how many different types of refrigerant sensors do we have in our equipment?
Yep. So in total, I don't have an official number on the number of actual part numbers for ordering, but to simplify it, there are 3 different refrigerant sensors. So essentially, all of our refrigerant sensors are a small PC board that is in some sort of cover or assembly that kind of mounts it to the unit. But there's only 3 different PC boards. The simple way to think of it, one of our refrigerant sensors is for our M series, our 4-way cassettes, and that's it. So our non-ducted units, wall mounts, floor mounts, 1-way cassettes, and 4-way cassettes. That's one of our sensors.
Okay.
Now, there may be multiple part numbers because they don't all mount the same, right? Some of them have a cover that gets clipped in. Some of them might be mounted with a screw. So there may be different part numbers just to make sure you have the right cover for it so it'll mount properly. But at the end of the day, the sensor that sits inside that cover is exactly the same. And that part number is the FCM 2630J1B. So that one refrigerant sensor covers all wall mounts, all floor mounts, all 1-way cassettes, all 4-way cassettes. So the benefit to that and why I mentioned that is because, and we talked about it in the first podcast when we introduced the A2L stuff, is when you get a branch box system, we ship however many ports of a branch box system you ordered, we send that sensor for wall mounts. So that, you keep it with the equipment and that sensor can replace any of those units' refrigerant sensor. So let's say, for example, you've got a branch box system and there's no wall mounts. That means you have 5 sensors or 3 sensors, depending on what size branch box you get, that are unused. Keep them with the equipment because if that 4-way cassette on the branch box ends up having a refrigerant leak, we need to replace that sensor. We can use that board out of the sensors that get shipped with the branch box instead of having to order another one. Now, you probably still should, just to have it as a backup, but at least we can get that back up and running today as opposed to having to order that part number and waiting.
Convenient.
Yeah. So that's the first one. The second is Excuse me. The second one is for all of our ducted units, except for the IntelliHeat. So that's our PEAD, it's our SEZ, and then it's our SVZ. So anything with ductwork on it besides the IntelliHeat, that's the FIS 5085 M1NC. So again, might have different part numbers depending on if it's just the sensor, it's the sensor and the cover, or the sensor cover and wiring. So just make sure you're ordering accordingly, but that board that sits inside there is exactly the same.
Now, this sensor is always being used.
Correct. Yeah, we'll get into that too.
Style unit.
Yep. Yeah, we'll cover that in a minute. And then the last one is just for the IntelliHeat, the FCM 2630K1A, single part number, just one, and it's only for the IntelliHeat. Now, all of these have about a 4,000 parts per million threshold, so they all work pretty much the same. And that's for 454B. So if 454B crosses that 4,000 part per million threshold, that sensor will go into alarm. Now, what's important to talk about next is which units have sensors built in, which units need to always have a sensor, all that good stuff.
All right, so let's just take them right down the list.
Sure.
With the first three letters of the nomenclature, we can say what kind. So the MSZ is a wall unit.
Correct. Yep. So MSZ wall mount units do not come with a sensor ever. They never have a sensor installed. Now, in a one-to-one or ported application, they're never going to need one. Never need to install one.
Okay.
So the only time you need to install one on a wall mount is when it's part of a smart multi branch box system. And again, the branch box is shipped with that sensor.
Yeah, so if you order a 3-port branch box, you'll get 3 sensors. Correct. If you order a 5-port branch box, you'll get 5 sensors.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the floor unit, the MFZ.
Yep. So your floor mount, it is built in and it is always monitoring. So whether it's a one-to-one, a ported, or a branch box, that refrigerant sensor is always active, being monitored by the outdoor unit for leaks.
Okay.
And it makes sense because the floor unit is down low on the floor.
And we mentioned it last week. That's when the refrigerant, if it leaks, is going to go to the low spot because it's heavier than air.
And that's why also with floor mounts, you have a maximum height off the ground rule now. So we want it low to the ground. Whereas it used to be able to kind of use it as a low wall mount. You might have to put it like a foot or so, or make sure you clear the baseboard. Now we can't go over 6 inches off the ground.
Okay, good to know.
Yep.
And then there's the MLZ, which is the one-way sealing cassette.
Yep. So MLZs, one-way cassettes, built-in sensor, only being monitored when part of a branch box system. So it's built in, but on a ported or a one-to-one, it's not going to detect the refrigerant. It's not looking for refrigerant leaks. It's not active.
Yeah, because once you wire these things and power them up, these indoor heads know what they're connected to.
Right.
Yeah, it's in the logic. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. And a lot of this is outdoor unit stuff. The outdoor unit kind of dictates what we're looking at. So that's why, and we did talk about this too, but with that floor mount, because it's always monitoring, always active, that's why we're pairing that floor mount with an SUZ outdoor unit now, because that SUZ has upgraded logic for detecting leaks and doing that, going to that mitigation strategy of running the air or fan at high speed. That's why we switched the floor mount to a SUZ because of the upgraded logic. An MLZ one-to-one is still only going on an M-Series outdoor unit.
Okay, good. And then I'm just going to take 2 P-Series units.
Sure.
The PKA, which is the wall unit, and the PCA, which is the suspended sealing unit.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
So PK and PCA, no refrigerant sensor built in, no refrigerant sensor ever needed. The reason for that is PKA and PCA are only compatible with a one-to-one system. They're not going to go on a ported. They're not going to go on a smart multi. They're not compatible with those units. So a refrigerant sensor will never be needed. When we install a PKA or a PCA, the only thing we're using is what we talked about last week, that A-min M-max chart. We're going to go into the install manual, locate that chart, and just make sure we're not exceeding the M-max for our total planned system charge.
All right. And then there's the 4-way sealing cassette, the PLA.
Yep. So 4-way cassettes, we can include the SLZ because it's the same logic. A PLA, all 4-way cassettes have a built-in sensor, but only active when part of a smart multi-branch box system. Not on a one-to-one, not on a ported.
All right. So now we get into our ducted units. We got the PEAD, the SEZ, the PVA, the SVZ, and the PAA, the IntelliHeat.
Yep. So all units with ductwork on them. Yep. So IntelliHeat's going to have ductwork. The pancake units, whether it's a PEAD or SEZ, right? Those have ductwork on them. And then our SVZ, the multi-position air handler. Those 3, they have ductwork on them. They have built-in refrigerant sensors, and they are always monitoring, whether they're part of a one-to-one system, a ported system, or a branch box style system.
So just to recap, the ones that are always monitoring are anything that's ducted and the floor unit.
You got it.
The MFZ. So that's easy enough to remember.
Yeah, pretty simple, straightforward. I think this was the part that I think as contractors are getting used to the transition, this is the anxiety-causing segment of it all is, what do I do with these refrigerant sensors? Is there a refrigerant sensor? Do I need a refrigerant sensor? Ultimately, the only thing that you have to worry about when it comes to installation of refrigerant sensors is when you have a wall mount as part of a branch box system. It's the only time as a contractor you will be installing in the field a refrigerant sensor. And it's included. You don't have to order it special, right? It's part of the branch box. It's shipped with the branch box. It's the only time you have to install that sensor.
We'll be right back.
Hey, listeners, if you like the METUS Tech Show, you should check out our YouTube channel called the METUS Training Network. That's METUS Training Network. Head on over to the METUS Training Network for tons of videos and programming made for HVAC professionals just like you. We've got technical training tips, HVAC program updates, and episodes of our new HVAC talk show called The Comfort Zone. Of course, you also get to catch up on more episodes of the METUS Tech Show as well. Head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the METUS Training Network today. Now, back to the METUS Tech Show. So have you installed a sensor or removed a sensor? So how easy is it to install a sensor in a wall mount?
If you can pull a blower wheel off of our wall mount, you can put in the sensor. So you partially take down the unit. You got to take out your vanes. You have to take off the front cover just to get access to your IC sensor. It's right next to the IC sensor. So as long as you can get that right side panel off, you have a little cavity right next to the IC sensor where your refrigerant sensor will clip.
So they don't have to pull the blower wheel out to get to the sensor.
No.
Just it's right when you take that front cover off.
Yep.
You have to remove the drain pan at all?
Nope.
It's all right there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
As long as you can expose enough to get that right side cover off, you'll see it. It's a wide open and there's a loose harness in there waiting for you. So you just plug it into the board of your refrigerant sensor and it will clip right in place, put everything back together.
This brings me to a story. And Steve, I've mentioned this before. When it's time for me to tell a story, we need kind of a theme music. So everybody knows I'm going way off down a rabbit hole with a story here.
Yeah.
Because with the blower on a wall unit, you reminded me, I was doing a class one time, and there was this, I'm going to say an old guy. He was my age, so he's an old guy. And he was complaining about taking out the blower, the wall unit is such a pain. It takes me 45 minutes. And this young kid probably had, I'm guessing, less than a year in the field. He goes, no, it's real easy. And I said, show him. And he went up to a wall unit in the training room, and he had that blower out in about 33 seconds.
Yeah, it does not take long.
It's attitude. You got to, let's just try it, because that's the thing. Sometimes you're so new and so young, you don't know it's supposed to be hard, and some people get defeated before they even try. Says, I don't want to do this. It's going to be so hard. But this kid's like, I don't know how to do it. I'm just going to figure it out.
And he knows how to do that because of practice. And you need a little practice, right? And those 3 little screws in the front of don't lose those screws. Yeah. And little plastic tabs that cover the screws. Yeah. Those are always the ones that get lost. And
it's always a mystery. Every time when I was in a truck and I took apart a wall unit and I put it back together, I can't explain it. There would always be extra screws.
Yep.
Oh, really?
And I would put every single one back. There'd always be
funny?
extra screws.
As I tell contractors in class, I tell them, whenever you're taking apart a wall mount, just keep taking out screws that you see until things start to come apart, because that's really all it is. You expose the front 2 screws, take them off, pop the cover. You're going to see a bunch of screws. Take them off, you can start moving things around. But when you take that screw off, put it in your pocket, because when you put it back together, you will have a screw left in your pocket, and you don't want the customer to see it.
Just happened yesterday to me. I was changing my kid's side view mirror on his car, and we were all done. It looks amazing and everything. And he says, Dad, what's this screw for? Don't pay attention to that. It's fine.
Not needed. It's extra.
We don't need that.
For me, it was always the top left coil screw. So there's 2 screws on the left-hand side of the coil that hold it in place, and I'd always forget the top one because I'm only 5'7". And I'm usually on like a step stool, and this thing's right up against the ceiling, and I'm too short to see that. So I knew to take it out, but when I was putting everything back, wouldn't see it and completely forgot.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I actually did. The first time it happened to me, I said, I got 2 extra screws. So I started taking the thing apart again and put it back together. Now I got 3 extra screws. What's going on here? I'm done.
So there's been a hot topic. A lot of misconceptions and myths and rumors and all these things floating around. Can I reuse a refrigerant sensor if it detects a leak?
Yeah. So the official answer is no. So if you look in any of our service manuals, it will tell you if a refrigerant sensor detects a leak, it needs to be replaced. Now, what I will say is it may reset, meaning it's not like a fusible link where if it detects that leak, it just breaks, right? It may reset, that concentration comes down. It may not trip out the unit anymore, but our service manual will tell you it needs to be replaced if a leak is detected.
So I'm going to make this suggestion based on that. The official answer is no. Mm-hmm. But if it happens to reset and you don't have a sensor with you and you leave that job site, order one and go back.
Yes.
Just
100%.
Because it's a safety issue now, and you don't want to have to live with that.
Right.
So just order one and go back.
Now, there's a heating element, I believe, on those sensors and how it detects that refrigerant and trips.
Yeah.
So that heating element could be defective. It may not trip again while you're there, but it may trip and it'll be a callback.
Yeah. So that's, just like a sniffer, right? We all have sniffers in our vans, and a lot of them are done the same way. It's a heated diode that kind of heats up that sensor to detect refrigerant leaks. Now, the nice thing is that with our P-Series units, so like any of our ducted units, anything like that, we get P-Series error codes, and there are 2 different P-Series error codes for that refrigerant sensor. The first is FL, which indicates a leak. So L, I use that as my way to remember it. If I see FL, that means leak. That refrigerant sensor, while active, detected a leak. So when I go to a service call, I see FL on the controller, I know, okay, I need to start diagnosing a leak situation, recover the refrigerant in the system, pressure test, start trying to find that leak. The other error code is FH. So FH is just an error that was detected in that sensor, which means it doesn't necessarily indicate a leak. It could be that heater has failed. Something on that PC board has fried out. FH is a sensor error, not necessarily a leak. Now, does that mean I'm not going to look for a leak? I might put my sniffer up there, maybe check pressure, standing pressure, see if I, have an issue with the charge. But realistically, that FH is just saying something was detected as an error in that sensor, and it could be something like the heater failing. So that's the nice thing is we can kind of narrow down what we're looking at. As far as diagnosing those sensors, the biggest thing is it's a PC board. So there's a lot going on that you're not really going to be able to test. But what you can test on any of our units is on pins 1 and 4 from our control board going down to that sensor is a 5-volt DC to power that board.
That's a very common voltage for our communication.
Right.
5 volts DC.
Yeah. So to diagnose, right? Because the other thing you don't want to do, you get an FH error code. You don't want to go, oh yeah, it's for a sensor error. I'll get you another sensor. And then come to find out the control board's just not putting out the voltage, right? So good check, go on pins 1 and 4. It's either going to be CN147 on some of our units. You may also see CNSA. Those are the 2 connectors for our refrigerant sensors. But both of them, pins 1 and 4, is our 5-volt DC to that PC board. Verify that voltage. If you have an FH error and I have that 5 volts, I'm going to replace that sensor.
If you don't have the 5 volts?
Control board.
Okay.
Right? Not putting out the voltage. So that's on the P-Series side. Smart Multi is the only time we might see a different code, and that's because of the 4-digit error codes that Smart Multi shows. 1521 corresponds to an FL, so leak. 1522 corresponds to a sensor error, just like FH. But then the Smart Multi also has a third error code that is 5558, which is for a non-applicable unit. Now, my understanding of that is if you try to get sneaky and put a 410 unit on that Smart Multi, you will get a 5558. Going to go into refrigerant
or
recovery.
maybe one of the designer wall units, like the EF units that are not compatible with the Smart Multi now, because that's changed. They are no longer compatible with the Smart Multi.
Right. Only FX and GX for wall mounts. But so non-applicable units. It's not approved on that Smart Multi. And the reason for that, right, is an EF unit is not going to have that refrigerant sensor. Right, a 410 unit is not going to have that refrigerant sensor, so it will immediately go into error.
And that's an important thing. I know we've mentioned it before, but 410A heads are not compatible with A2L
correct
outdoor units and vice versa.
Yep.
You can't mix and match.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be all 410A or all A2L. We're not going to mix and match.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a good thing to just kind of cover is those refrigerant sensors. And, like I said earlier, it's the thing that's nerve-wracking. It's what's going on with all of this. But don't overthink it. You're never going to have to install one unless it's a wall mount on a branch box.
And that's it. And I think that's a lot of fear right there.
Yep.
The only time you need to install a sensor is on a wall unit with a branch box, and you don't have to order anything. It comes with the branch box.
Yep.
Right? And I want to clear something up, and I think it's because of me. You said leave the sensors you don't use with the branch box. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure this is the case. I'm not 100% positive, but because I'm not positive, I'm just going to say it. I was always told, and it was always my understanding, that everything that comes in that box belongs to the end user, and that includes the manuals.
Yeah. You
should never take a manual with you. It should always stay with the equipment. So those sensors that come with a branch box, the end user is paying for that. Mm-hmm. And it's even if they're not paying it, it's a landlord pay. It still belongs with the equipment. So that's why we're not telling you to keep those
on your van.
And keep them. They're not yours. They belong to the consumer, to the end user of that product. So.
Right. And who knows, you might be the service guy that goes back when a sensor does fail, and it's going to be really nice instead of digging around in your van to try to find where you put those, that they're, zip tied or taped to the branch box or sitting on top of the branch box. Yeah. Grab it, swap it out.
Yeah. And put a note someplace, in the branch box, put a piece of tape there and say extra sensors on top. So, so it's obvious.
100%.
So, Brendan, thank you. Is there anything else we need to know about sensors, or have we covered just about everything?
I think we've covered everything. I mean, we know our part numbers now. We know which ones go to which units and which ones are always monitoring. That's kind of the most important stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, thanks again for putting this together.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, St. Louis it is very soon.
Yeah, well,
we'll be having a Gerber sandwich.
Like 6 weeks. Yeah, baby food. But
yeah, it is a while away. End of March.
No, I'm really
be here before.
I think I'm gonna make that. What was that thing? Gooey butter cake.
Yeah, gooey butter cake.
Look up a recipe.
I'm kind of excited about that cracker thin pizza, tavern style pizza. That looks amazing. And the other thing, the snoots. I'm gonna try some snoots.
I'm looking forward to the snoots. You know what I saw? I was last night. I was waiting for my son. I was picking him up, and I'm going through the TikTok thing, and some guy, totally off topic here, but he took a rotisserie chicken and he ripped off the skin, and then he battered it with flour and some spices, and then he deep fried it. I'm like, oh man, that looks
so you know what I did with a rotisserie chicken the other day? So me and my wife are doing the carnivore diet, kind of like 90% of the diet's carnivore. We'll throw some veggies in there here and there, but trying to find different things to eat. And it's basically carnivore diet is meat and eggs.
Yeah,
right. I have a little hamburger with some eggs, and I love it. But after a while, eating the same thing, and need some different ideas. So I found a recipe online for a carnivore pizza. So I took a rotisserie chicken, small rotisserie chicken. I pulled apart all the meat, threw it in a Ninja blender, 2 eggs in the Ninja blender, and you blend up the chicken. And you grab some parchment paper, put it on a pan. And it was the first time this Portuguese guy used the parchment paper.
I use it all the time. I use it all the time.
So it's amazing. Parchment paper is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you take that chicken mixture and you make a dough with it.
Yeah.
Make a little round dough. And for the sauce, I made a homemade Alfredo. Now, don't use Alfredo from the jar because that's not carnivore. But I made my own Alfredo with butter and some cheeses, and I forgot what else I put in there. So that was the sauce. And then I threw some mozzarella on there and pepperoni, carnivore pizza.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it wasn't bad. It was better than cauliflower crust pizza.
Yes.
My wife had me make a cauliflower pizza crust once, and ended up in the trash. It was so awful.
Well, you have to buy the pre-made crusts, but then you don't know what they're putting in it. Mm-hmm. So, carnivore pizza wasn't bad. Let me tell you, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you actually went the whole rotisserie chicken route with that. Because
if you use the canned chicken, that was what the recipe called for. Was the canned chicken. And I don't know when you open up a can of chicken or any canned type of meat, it's got that canned food smell.
Yeah.
And it stays with the chicken. So
what I've done in the past, because I've done something similar, I do actually, I'll bread it and I'll make like a cutlet basically as my crust. but I just get ground chicken, which is not at every grocery store, but ground chicken.
Yeah.
And then I'll use that as my.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen ground chicken.
It's rare. There was only a few stores that would have it, but when I could get my hands on it, that's what I would do with it. I'd either make chicken meatballs or make like a crust and do like a.
So I used to do buffalo chicken dip for my kid. My kid loves buffalo chicken dip, so I would, to make it easy, I would get the cans of chicken.
Yeah, my wife does that.
And shredded chicken, but I don't know. It just has that weird. You open up the can, it's got that gelatin. And so I rotisserie chicken, shred it up, make it a buffalo chicken dip that way.
How did we get here from St. Louis?
I don't know, but that's where we go.
Carnivore.
Heat pump talk and food talk,
Yeah.
as Ryan would say.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you on the next one.
Take care, brother.